Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. So, we're going to talk about a survey that just came out that tells us this critical condition right now in the Catholic Church. It talks about how there are Catholic converts, the church is gaining converts, but there are also a significant amount of people leaving the church. And when they crunch the numbers, way more people are evidently leaving Catholicism than becoming members of the church. So it's a very critical situation. So we're going to take a look at that and explore some of the reasons why this may be happening, as well as some potential solutions. Before we dive in, though, remind you, hit the subscribe button and the like button. I'd really appreciate your support for the channel. So I'm going to review an article that summarizes the research, the data that was recently collected on this situation. This is coming from Crisis Magazine that has summarized it and offered some pretty helpful thoughts on the situation. So let's take a look at it together. Let's see what it says. Catholics are rapidly losing ground. And honestly, I did not expect that. I thought that there's actually more converts than there are people who are leaving the faith, specifically in the American Catholic Church. And I think that this particular part of the survey is just geared towards Catholicism in the United States. However, I would certainly imagine that Europe is probably the same, if not worse, as far as its position relative to America. So a new survey shows that for every 100 Catholics, so new converts to the Catholic Church, for every 100 new Catholics, more than 800 people leave the church. That's a mic drop moment. That's a slap in the face. That's somebody throwing cold water in one's face. I mean, that really is just wow. So for every one person who converts to Catholicism, 8 are leaving. The situation is really, really critical. It says, as bad as that is, the news is actually worse when we look more closely at the numbers. And it says radical changes are needed. So the article indicates last week the Pew Research Center released a new survey on religion in America. Their first major study on this type since 2014. So it's been a little while since they've had one of these. Upon the survey's publication, I could almost hear a collective groan from Catholics, since we've come to approach such polls with a sense of dread. The question isn't, will it be bad? The question is, how bad will it be? Ain't that the truth? You know, we've looked at some of these polls before, and they're usually really bad. They'll ask questions like, you know, how many of you Catholics believe in transubstantiation or something like that? And the results are always very, very concerning. He says only 19% of Americans self-identify as Catholic, down from 24% in 2007. So the people who are identifying, who are saying they are Catholics, I mean, they're not checking your Catholic card and your baptismal certificate and your local membership. They're just asking you, are you Catholic, yes or no, kind of thing. It went from 24% in 2007 to 19%, a 20% decrease since 2007. By comparison, Protestants decreased by 21%, while religious nuns, that is, people who don't have any kind of particular affiliation, but they feel that they're somehow religious, they increased by 81%. Let that sink in. People are leaving Catholicism. They're leaving Protestantism, but you're saying the nuns are growing significantly. And Muslims in America increased by an astounding 200%. Although they still make up a small percentage of the overall population, only 1.2%. And some may say, hey, where's Eastern Orthodoxy in this? We'll take a look at that in another stream. It turns out they're not gaining numbers. So it's not the case that somehow Catholics and Protestants are going to Eastern Orthodoxy. No. What it is Catholics and Protestants are leaving to either be nothing, or they're just spiritual but not religious, the nuns, or they're going to Islam or something else. Even though the Pew survey headline suggests that the decline in Christianity in this country may have leveled off, it's clear the overall direction is downward. The numbers get worse for Catholics. Perhaps the most stunning finding in the survey is that for every 100 people who join the Catholic Church, 840 leave. So when you rejoice, saying folks become Catholic at Easter, remember that more than 8 people have left the back door for each one who's come in through the front. No other religion has nearly as bad of a join/leave ratio. And let that sink in. For every 100 people that become Protestant, 180 leave. But for Catholics, every 100, 840 leave. He says that's bad, but it's not Catholic bad concerning the Protestants. Conversely, for every 100 people who leave the religious nuns, they join a religion, a full 590 become part of that irreligious cohort. Where are the former Catholics going? Of all the former Catholics, 56% become religious nuns. So a lot of them are just saying, we're just not affiliated with any particular community. So you do have converts to other religions. That is happening. But a lot of them are just saying, yeah, I'm kind of done with this organized religion kind of thing. 32% become Protestant. Listen to that. So that 840 for every 100 converts to Catholicism, 840 are leaving. 32% are becoming Protestant. So they're gaining a lot of Catholics. Now, of course, there are Protestants who become Catholic. But this is showing there's a ton of Catholics becoming Protestant. I think we all know from personal experience that these numbers ring true. What Catholic doesn't have family members who've become Protestant? He says it's bad, but it's actually worse than you might think. You might have noticed something peculiar about what I've shown you. If so many people are leaving the church, how is it that the total number has only dropped by 20%? Shouldn't it be more? And here's something interesting that he brings up. Yes, but there's something that keeps the numbers slightly afloat. Immigration. As the Pew survey itself states, immigration has helped to bolster the number of Catholics in the United States. So while millions are fleeing the Catholic Church, new migrants keep the overall numbers from looking horrific. He says, I'm not saying our bishops are working so hard to keep mass immigration alive in this country to keep the true horrible state of the church hidden, but the inflow sure does end up having that effect. Now, he's not saying that, but many will say that. Many will say that the bishops were really pushing hard on the immigration issue, not so much because they cared about immigrants and humanity and humanitarian issues, but because they know the numbers are dwindling and many of those immigrants will help offset the decrease that the Catholic Church has been experiencing. Now, whether that's true or not, hard to say. You would have to be a soul reader and know people's intentions. But some people are going to, say, well, this is one of the reasons why. that they were pushing for immigration so hard. That to me right there was something that I guess I haven't really thought of, because I suppose I wasn't really aware that there's this many people leaving Catholicism. I knew a lot of people were leaving Catholicism. I already know that for various reasons. I guess I didn't realize it was that bad. I didn't know it was 840 people are leaving for every 100 converts. That's a nightmare. And then when you see that number, you have to ask, okay, well, why isn't the overall bottom line um, more severe than what we saw with that 20% decrease? Well, it's because of an influx of immigration in the United States. So it doesn't look like Catholicism is losing as many members as it actually is because of an influx of Catholic immigrants. It continues. However, let me share my screen again. That's not all the bad news. All of the numbers above reflect self-identifying Catholics. It makes no distinction between practicing and non-practicing Catholics. Fortunately, the survey also asks about attendance at religious services. But these numbers are also discouraging. Only 29% of self-identifying Catholics attend Mass weekly. Only 29%. So from the people who are saying, I'm a Catholic, only 29% go to Mass weekly. So only 29% of the 19% of Americans who identify as Catholic actually fulfill the Sunday obligation. So he says, the Pew survey doesn't ask about going to confession, but based on other surveys, the total number of self-identifying Catholics who go to confession at least once a year is around 10%. So among those who say, I'm a Catholic, around 10% go to confession, not once a month, but once a year. Let's be optimistic and say it's around actually 20%, and that all those Catholics also go to Mass weekly. Based on the very minimally defined idea of a practicing Catholic, as someone who attends Mass weekly and confession yearly, probably at most 20% of the 19% of self-identified Catholics are practicing Catholics. So he runs the numbers. He says you got 340 million Americans. 19% identify as Catholic. That gives us 64 million. So 64 million people in the United States will say they're Catholics. But 20% of those, and this is being generous, 20% of them are Catholics. It's probably half of that, though. But 20% of those are Catholics, which would mean 12 million practicing Catholics. That's not a lot. People who are actually practicing Catholicism, 12%. And this is being overly generous, I think. Wow. Compare this number of practicing Catholics to the 98.6 million religious nuns. There are almost 8 times more religious nuns in America than practicing Catholics. And then remember, more than 50 million of the people who identify as Catholics don't even do the minimum to be considered practicing their faith in any real sense, he argues. So he says, 2 questions naturally arise. How did it happen? What can we do? He says Catholics ignoring the problem is the biggest challenge. But from the top of his head, he suggests some reasons for why so many people are leaving the church, why there is a mass exodus in Catholicism. And thank you, Mahoval, for the super chat. He says, issue is that data is misleading. For many, being Catholic was just cultural identity thing, not faith and practicing Catholics. Numbers confirm that. Thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. So here's some of the reasons that he suggests are why people are leaving the Catholic Church. He says ineffective leadership, especially among bishops. With that one, I agree. And I would also put that one at the very top. I agree with that. I've told y'all numerous times, if you fix the issue of a lack of church discipline in the Catholic Church, you get stronger bishops who are more zealous for the faith and also are disciplining people, especially the scandalous. That will be something that I think would go a long way because people would then take it seriously. But when they see that the shepherds aren't taking the faith seriously, why would they? Let me give you an example. Okay. I'm drinking my coffee right now. It's the Walmart brand coffee. A good old great value coffee. Okay. Got my Walmart coffee here. Okay. Let's say that the CEO of Walmart, the board of Walmart, all of the employees of Walmart absolutely hate great value coffee. They think it's disgusting. They're working against it. They're funding other companies, other coffee companies, okay, Starbucks and stuff like that. And they're very vocal about how they can't even take this coffee seriously. It's so bad. And you see it in their words, their actions, everything. Would you be convinced based on that you need to get the great value coffee? No. No, of course not. Because if they don't believe in their own product, how would you? Right? Common sense. But the problem is if Catholic bishops don't really take the faith seriously in their preaching and what they teach, and also in their conduct, not only personally, but in disciplining, especially the scandalous in the Catholic Church, if they're not sending signals that we're taking this seriously, in fact, if they're sending the opposite signals, I'm okay, you're okay, doesn't matter whether you're Catholic or Buddhist or Hindu or whatever, and doesn't matter if you're pro-abortion politician, doesn't matter if you're this or that, doesn't really matter, we're not going to do anything about it, we don't take it seriously. If that's the message you're sending, you really think that's going to attract people? Of course not. So ineffective leadership, especially among bishops, I think there's some truth to that. If y'all disagree, hey, please let me know and tell me why I'm wrong. Religious indifference, yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of Catholics obviously don't take Catholicism seriously, and that sends the wrong message. If Catholics aren't taking the faith seriously, why would anyone else? Poor catechesis. Oh, absolutely. I agree with that one. From everything from your liberal Catholics to your rad trad Catholics, there's a crisis in catechesis. And it's not just with the laity, it's with priests, it's with bishops. I remember asking a bishop for an imprimatur on a book that I was writing on the church fathers. He told me, well, I don't really know anything about the church fathers. He had never issued an imprimatur before, which was kind of a red flag for me, but be that as it may. He said, I don't really know anything about the church fathers. I'm just thinking, wait, your main task is to guard the deposit of faith. And one of the important ways to know what the deposit of faith is to know the church fathers, according to the magisterium itself. So if you don't know that, how are you guarding the deposit of faith, which is like your number one job, right? And that's just one example among numerous others. I think we all know it's way worse than that, right? There's exceptions here and there. There's some good bishops out there. There's some knowledgeable bishops. Some good priests, knowledgeable priests. I've interviewed some of them, had them on. You'll see them in the chat sometimes. There's exceptions, right? But I'm just speaking broadly. Poor catechesis, and it's not just with the laity. Don't blame it entirely on them. It's especially ineffective leadership, starting with the bishops and the priests. Okay. Scandals within the church. Yeah, and we probably need to bump that one on up to number 2, if not number 1, right? I mean, come on. Yeah, that's who I think yeah, that one probably needs to be number 1, and let's downgrade everything else, and let's even make ineffective bishops number 2. I think scandals within the church has really just rocked the situation with American Catholicism. There's no two ways about it. And all sorts of scandals, abuse scandals, and other kinds as well. Irreverent masses, I think there's something to be said about that. Yeah, I think that the way that the liturgy is celebrated in some cases is really, really concerning. And my thing is, I know when a person comes and sees those masses, they're not going to be interested in Catholicism. Let me put it like this. Let's say you got a guy who's been studying church history, reading about, the church fathers, has read in history about the glories of Christendom and the glories of the Catholic Church, and has seen these really inspiring Gothic cathedrals and sees the beauty of Catholicism, and then they go to the average Novus Ordo. Those are two different worlds, right? What we've seen in history and what we've seen with the heights of Catholicism that you might study in a history book or see whenever you're on tour in Europe versus what you're actually going to experience at the parish level. There are two different worlds there. And if you're latching on to the theoretical concept of Catholicism, you're going to be really disappointed when you go to your local parish. 9 times out of 10. There's exceptions. There's exceptions. There's some great local parishes. There's some great Novus Ordo liturgies and Latin masses and Eastern Catholic churches. There's some exceptions, but we're just talking in general here. You're likely going to be very disappointed. And that will probably be the end of a person's journey in discerning Catholicism at that point. And then they're starting to look at Eastern Orthodoxy or something else. He says lackluster parishes. Sure. Overall lack of enthusiasm for the faith. Yep. Secularization of the culture. Yeah, we got to bump that one on up. We got to bump that one on up in the list, because here's the reality. In so many cases, it is so hard to distinguish secular society from the church. If there is something that secular society values, it might be the most godless thing, but if they value it, I've noticed that it tends to creep its way into the church and becomes the topic of homilies and letters and all sorts of stuff. Press conferences, you name it. And a lot of times, the same agenda that's being pushed in the secular world is then being pushed within the church, which tells you what? The church is filled with secular people. And we're not just talking about laity. We're also talking about shepherds. So many times, the church is a reflection of the world. And in reality, the church is supposed to be a witness to the world, a shining light, a beacon. It's supposed to be, as the New Testament says, Christianity is supposed to be, Christian community is supposed to be a peculiar people, not like society. Yes, you got to live in the world, but not be of the world, Paul says. But so many times, I don't see the difference. So secularization of culture, but I would add to that the secular culture within the Catholic Church. Within the Catholic Church. Rapid advances in technology that allow someone to feel fulfilled without religion. Yeah, I can see that too. Now, what are his solutions that he suggests to that? Well, he suggests promote homeschooling more, make the Latin Mass more celebrated, abolish the USCCB, halt all interreligious activities, return to the Baltimore Catechism, bring back Long Friday abstinence, shut down parish sports leagues that play on Sundays. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure some of this will reach some people and would be something that would, be meaningful to them and would turn things around for them. But I think this doesn't speak to the vast majority of the people who are leaving the Catholic Church. This isn't going to fix the situation for 99% of those people. It might help 1%, but not the 99. So what do you actually do? Well, look at his list again. His solutions don't necessarily match up with the list of problems. So how do you fix this? Well, ineffective leadership. Get better bishops. In other words, the Pope needs to be appointing better bishops. There needs to be a better system in choosing bishops. That's not entirely going to be something that laity can do. This is more an issue between the Pope and the bishops. They're going to have to fix that one. So ball's in their court on that. What about a religious indifference? Well, yes, certainly promoting Christianity, the exclusivity of salvation in Jesus. So there was some connection there. I think he mentioned halt all interreligious activities. From that, I have to take somehow, not necessarily just promoting interreligious activities, but somehow speak of the unicity of Jesus and salvation in Jesus, and an emphasis on the necessity to be a member of the church, stuff like that. Poor catechesis, how do you fix that? Better catechesis. I mean, it's just pretty easy, right? He suggests the Baltimore Catechism. I don't think it's an issue between the current catechism of the Catholic Church versus the Baltimore Catechism. I think the issue is catechism isn't being taught at all, or very little. So whether it's Baltimore Catechism or the Catechism of the Catholic Church promulgated by JP2, either way, I just don't think that people are really learning their faith and being catechized very well. So I don't think it's a particular problem with any individual catechism. Scandals within the church. Okay, well, what will fix that? Church discipline will fix that immediately. But that's the biggest problem in the Catholic Church today, is a lack of church discipline. Irreverent masses. Is the solution automatically Latin masses? For some people, that will be the solution. But I don't think that's going to be the solution for the majority of them, especially if 32% of them are going to Protestantism. Latin mass is not going to be the solution for them. However great it may be, it's not going to speak to the majority of people who are leaving. Is that the solution? Well, at the very least, do a good Novus Ordo. You do a good Novus Ordo. In some cases, the vast majority of people can't even tell the difference between a really good, well-celebrated Novus Ordo and a Latin Mass. They can't even tell the difference. So, you could basically look at this list here and probably agree with most of this as, yeah, these are really serious problems, and the solution is just to do the opposite. But some of this it's not within the power of the laity to change. Ineffective leadership, that's on the bishops, that's on the Pope. Now, maybe long-term that can change by the laity. How? Producing traditional families who actually believe in the Catholic faith, and then maybe one of them, one of the kids becomes a priest, and then he becomes a bishop, and then they become cardinals and all that. That's going to take time, though. That's a long-term plan. It's not going to be overnight. More immediate solutions, the ball's in the bishop's court, and especially in the Pope's court. A lack of discipline. And it's so sad to see the case of Archbishop Cordileone, who tried to discipline Nancy Pelosi, and as soon as he did it, the Vatican undermined him. And Pope Francis even indirectly undermines him. He doesn't mention him by name, but indirectly he's calling him out and undermines him on TV. It doesn't back him up. What message does that send to the other bishops who want to take church discipline seriously? Here's the message it sends. Rome and the Pope will not back you up. If you try to discipline one of these wayward politicians, Rome will not back you up. That was the message that he sent Pope Francis, whether he meant to or not. I criticized it at the time, and I'm still going to criticize it. Whether that was the intention or not, that's the message that the bishops got. So some of it is on him. Other aspects on the bishops in the United States. Some areas, sure, laity can do more. Catechesis and stuff, laity can take more of an active role in parish catechesis. You don't have to put everything on the priest. You can have better people who are catechizing individuals at the parish level, and that's something that laity can work on. Irreverent masses, that's going to be a combination of laity working on that, the priest and the bishop. Sometimes the priest's hands are kind of tied by his bishop. Sometimes they're not, and the priest is able to make some adjustments to the liturgy that are more in line with tradition and make them more reverent if the people will back them up. Even if the bishop doesn't like it, if he knows that his parishioners want this, the bishop will normally let the priest do it. But if the priest tries to make changes in the liturgy to make them more reverent, to follow the rubrics more ad orientem or something like that, and the laity in the parish don't want it, oh, you better believe he's going to get a phone call the first day he tries to celebrate a reverent mass, because there's going to be plenty of complaints from the parishioners, and that bishop is going to put him in line immediately and say, "What are you doing over there? You better cut it out." Because the bishop's not going to want any problems with the laity in the parish. So he's going to say, "Get your act in order. Get it together. Stop doing what you're doing." But again, if the laity in the parish are backing up the priest, the bishop's going to be a lot more likely to just let it go, even if he's not traditional himself, even if he doesn't like that, even if he's more modern and more liberal leaning. If he knows the parishioners are backing him up, he's going to give a lot of leeway to the priest. So some of these things can be adjusted by the laity, but in a lot of cases, a lot of this is going to be on the hierarchy. So those are my thoughts on the matter. I didn't want to just bring bad news to you and just show you what the problems are and why we're here. I wanted to maybe offer some solutions. I do think it's going to take time. I don't think the situation will be fixed overnight. But slowly but surely, I think that things could get better. Keep in mind, it could get way worse. Just because something can get better doesn't mean it will. It could get way worse. The numbers are showing a downward trajectory, and they may not necessarily go back up. It could be way, way worse than this. Hard to say what the future is. Keep that in mind as well. And so let that then prevent you from being lax and not doing anything. I hope this was helpful to y'all. If it was, please hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button. I also want to make y'all aware of something. Y'all may have seen me talk about this before. Let me go to it. Let me share my screen. At CatholicPolytechnic.org, I am teaching 3 courses on the magisterium for the first of its kind, a magisterial study certificate program. So the teaching authority of the church, the magisterium. Next Monday will be the last lecture for the 3 courses for the first round of the program, and then we'll have our graduates for the program. Because of that, in May 12th, we're starting a new round. So if you want to be part of this magisterial study certificate program, now's the time, because course 1 of 3 for this program, Introduction to the Magisterium, begins May 12th. And so if you want to sign up, you're going to go to CatholicPolytechnic.org/magisterium. I'll put a link to it in the comment section and in the show notes. And you'll come over here, you'll click to register, click here to register, and then you'll come over here and you'll pay the tuition. Right now, there's a $250 fee for the course, down from $350. There's an early bird discount. Take advantage of it now while it's still there, because pretty soon it's going to kick up to $350. So get it at a discount now while you still can, So if you want to learn more about the magisterium, Catholic teaching authority, this is where you need to go. The only certificate program of its kind in the world, first of its kind, which is somewhat sad because we were just talking about the lack of catechesis. We should have already had magisterial study certificate programs. We should have already just had magisterial studies programs in the Catholic Church. It's a good question why we don't have that. Why it's just taught as basically one lecture in an ecclesiology course. Well, because of that, so many people are ignorant about the magisterium and how it works, and that causes so many problems in the church today. So to address the problem of a lack of catechesis, this is one way to do it. For yourself and for the people around you, for your family, and everyone else that you come into contact, especially if you're somebody who catechizes people at the parish level. This is a great course for you. So check it out. CatholicPolytechnic.org/magisterium. All right, y'all. That's going to do it for today. Don't forget, tomorrow, I'm going to have an interview with the Oriental Orthodox Christian who debated Stuart and Cliff Connectly, I guess is how you pronounce their name when I looked it up online. I thought it was Netchel, but I think it's Connectly. You've probably seen it already on this channel. I did a 2.5 hour review of that debate. And he was talking to them about the Eucharist and the church fathers. And so you kind of got to see an Orthodox versus a Protestant on that topic. Well, I'm interviewing him tomorrow. There's a link for it already up. Just simply go to it. You'll see the live stream link already here on the channel. Click that bell for notification so you see when I go live, and hit the sub button while you're at it. Lastly, I need y'all's support. I need y'all's financial support. It's very costly running this channel and also saying some of the things that I say. It makes me somewhat unpopular. A lot of people call for my cancellation because of it. And because of that, yeah, some people want to unsubscribe and not support the channel. So if you've benefited from the channel, if you appreciate what I'm saying, if you want to show support so I continue to do so, great way to do it, patreon.com/reason and theology. You get access to plenty of extra content, and you also enable me to continue to do what I do, to do what you love the most, which is provide this content to y'all for free. So if you like that, you appreciate it, hey, go support me at Patreon. I really would appreciate your efforts there. And also, you don't necessarily have to do Patreon. Some of y'all don't like Patreon. Got a locals as well, reasonandtheology.locals.com. And then, if you don't want those, just hit the join button right next to the subscribe button right here on YouTube and become a channel member and support the channel there. All right, see you tomorrow for that interview. Hope you are looking forward to it. Go ahead and hit the like button on that like stream already, by the way. All right, we'll see you later. God bless. Has someone ever come to you and spoken about contradictions in the Catholic Church's magisterium? I'm really excited to tell you that I'm going to be exploring magisterial difficulties and various ways in which people have attempted to harmonize tensions that can be found in the magisterium, in the teachings of the Catholic Church. We're going to explore these tensions in quite a few areas: slavery, the death penalty, religious liberty, and many other topics. I'm going to do this in 2 lectures that you can attend with me live on video, and you can ask me questions at the end. There will be 2 lectures, 50 minutes each with a 15-minute break in between, and 30 minutes for Q&A at the end where you can ask me any question about the topic that you would like. If you would like to attend, it's going to be on April 26th at 12 p.m. Central, and you can join me live via video. You'll also be able to come back and watch the video at a later time because it will be posted as a course. So if you miss it live, you can still see the video later on. I hope you get a chance to check it out. Magisterial difficulties, exploring the tensions and the documents of the church. And right now there's an early bird discount going on, so be sure to check it out. I got a link to it in the show description, or visit rtcourses.com for more information. I hope to see you there. Are you seeking clarity in the midst of confusion about Eastern Orthodoxy and Catholicism? In my book, Answering Orthodoxy, I offer a biblical and historical response to the most common objections that Eastern Orthodox offer against the Catholic Church. This book is for anyone searching for the truth, whether you're Catholic, Orthodox, or simply trying to make sense of the differences between Catholics and Orthodox. Order your copy today and discover the rational, biblical, and historical basis for the Catholic Church. Visit Amazon to order your copy today.